As promised, I'm finally going to show you a razored Pixie. Now the model that I've chosen today is Miss Bridget Marie. She's already got her hair pre-shampooed, and she has a fairly straight texture. Now, a thing to know about pixie cuts is you don't have to have straight hair to be a good candidate for a pixie cut. In fact, pretty soon I'm going to take a model with a little bit more texture and do a pixie cut on her as well. But we're going to save that for another video. Today is Bridget. The tools I'm going to be using are going to be a hair cutting razor. I like this one by Pivot Point. I also like this one by Donald Scott, NYC. But for much of my razor cutting, I prefer an unguarded straight razor. Kind of a different touch, a different feel of the razor, whether you've got a guard on there or not. It's really up to you and your level of comfortability. A thing to note about pixies. There is no such haircut as a pixie cut. If a guest walks in and says, I want a pixie cut, that tells me almost nothing other than they want their hair short. If you were to Google pixie cut, you're going to come up with images like this. From the very short, cropped pixie to something longer that could be described as a bob. Even this messed up haircut that Bridget has right now, somebody might call it pixie. So number one, pixie describes nothing but shorter hair. Some of the things that can help you narrow it down to what your guest actually wants are your features. Like, do you want hair from the back to be visible when looking at the person in the front? Or do you want it to be a slimmer profile? Do we want fullness in the sides? And most importantly, how long do you want your fringe to be, if any? Today I'm going for the classic crop, which could probably most accurately be called a pixie cut, which is going to give us fringe that's really barely even long enough to sweep. It's going to end up being above the eyebrows, pretty high on the forehead. The advantage of cutting with a razor, it's going to help direct the movement of the haircut, but it's also going to help me debulk and also get some wispiness without having to go back in detail too much. So it's going to be a more efficient, more condensed cutting style. So the baseline for this haircut can be described as a uniform layer or round layers, where basically most of the hairs on the head are actually the same length all the way around. One more thing to note before we get started, especially with shorter hair, but all hair in general, and I've done videos about a lot of these little tips that I'm doing too. Lighter colored hair is going to show off texture a lot more than darker colored hair. If my guest shows me a picture of a very textured pixie cut, the model is blonde, but my guest has dark hair like this, we may need to adjust some expectations or do something a little bit different to achieve visually the same result. Because we're starting with a framework that's the same length all the way around the head, I'm going to start with the longest hairs on the haircut, which on a pixie is typically the fringe. So an important thing to note about cutting with a razor is that it's very organic. It's very much like sculpture, but there are some rules that you're going to need to follow. Number one, always cut in the direction of the cuticle, which means towards the ends of the hair, never towards the roots, because that's going to rough up the cuticle and give you a bad result, and certainly not a good long-term result. So I'm going to follow the typical rule and make sure that I'm gripping from my first knuckle towards the tip of my fingers. That's where I can get good grip. The hair tends to slip out behind that first knuckle. And remember that the direction that your razor is pointing is going to be the direction which that hair tends to want to move. So I'm going to cut downward and back toward myself. Now, ideally, I wouldn't be standing exactly where I'm standing. I'd be standing right in front of my guest, but then you wouldn't be able to see what I'm doing. From this point on, everything's going to be 90 degrees from the point of origin. So 90 degrees on the top of the head is straight up toward my camera like that. However, 90 degrees from the front of the head is going this way. And because I want to push this hair forward, now that I've come past the apex of the head, I'm going to take radial partings and follow them around the crown. So now she's got a crazy pixie mullet happening right now. But we can begin to see the DNA of that pixie cut and how it's going to look. So if I take this bang length that I've got here, I'm going to pull everything straight forward and use the corner of the fringe as my guide. Just back and forth. Let the razor do the work. What that's done for me is actually left this sideburn area significantly longer. Now I can take this longer piece here as my guide. No pressure at all. Just back and forth with the razor, letting the razor do the work for you. What you should not see is the hair bending under the pressure of the razor. Comb into your guide. And now we can even more start to see how that pixie is going to end up looking. If you really want to know how things are going to look once you're done, you can't just rely on all the over direction you did. You have to comb things into natural fall and cut them that way. And there's nothing wrong with just pinching a little piece and doing some sculpting. Now on the way around the ear, Same thing on this side. As on the previous side. Over direct forward to preserve length. Follow that guide back. Then comb down into natural fall to refine. Quick tip with pixie cuts and the sideburn. 2 quick tips. Number 1, use your mirror to look for symmetry. Because if you look with your bare eyes, you may not notice that one side is slightly longer than the other. Number 2, everybody has a wide sideburn and a skinny sideburn. Identify your wide side first and sculpt that to perfection before you then come and sculpt your skinny side. Because if you make the skinny side perfect and then come to the wide side, you're going to end up having to cut into the hairline to find something that matches, or just settle with not having a match. I'm going to start in the center back. And continue this shorter length around the head. The shorter length from above, down, below. The higher you pull up off the hairline, the longer you're going to end up leaving this hair. Now that we have our length established, we have just a few things to go. Number 1, it's all about the details with the pixie cut. So I'm going to have my guest just gently put their chin down. Too aggressive of a chin down is going to stretch their neck out, and you don't want that. Because if you stretch out the nape area and you cut something, when they look back up, the shape you thought you had is going to change. Now with the razor, one of the things I like to do is just very gently skate across the surface down here. Check for symmetry in the mirror, and continue that all the way around. Here's where I can adjust the shape and kind of look at the general silhouette. I like to sort of mess the hair up blouse it a little, so I can kind of get an idea of where it's going to get fluffy and decide whether or not I'm satisfied with that. I still feel like she's a little full right here. Because I want that hair to move forward, I'm going to come through. And do a little bit of debulking toward the face. Now she's not looking as bulky through here. That's all it took. And now these funky blue color placements are messing with me. If she's gonna wear it this way, I'm still feeling a little bulky here. So I want to be able to push that hair that way. Maybe this kind of forward. And I'm still feeling a little bulky here. So once again, I'm going to take my razor and kind of skip through a few sections. And let the hair just kind of fall out of my fingers as I go. Because basically I have hair from here that wants to be there and hair from here that wants to be there. So I need to make some room. And right here, we're going to do some freehand sculpting. Because I want to open this up a little, make it feel a little more like a part. Since you're working with wet hair, if you're trying to thin it and make it look wispy or tenderly, as a general rule, on wet hair, if it doesn't look like you've overdone it, then you haven't done it enough. Because when it dries, it's going to seem to expand, and then what once looked wispy isn't going to look wispy anymore. So you do it until you feel like you're kind of having a heart attack. Done maybe a little too much, and it's going to be perfect. Here's our finished product. As you can see, she's nice and piecey through here. Not too bulky around these edges. Wispy at the back. And you can really make some decisions on how you style it. Particularly, but it really just starts out with literally all the hair the same length around the head, and then little details here and there. The next pixie cut we do might be a slightly longer version with some texture. Let me know if you're looking forward to seeing that, and I'll see you next time.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. If you like what you saw and you want to see some more, go ahead and check out some of my other videos. Feel free to share with any of your nerdy friends. Click the subscribe button. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. Let me know what else you want to hear about. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.